Now, the Azerbaijan-Armenia conflict is also expected to be discussed at the Granada summit. Armenia's Prime Minister Nikol Pashinyan will be there, but Azerbaijan's president has called off his visit. European leaders were hoping to broker talks between the two leaders. Now, Mr. Pashinyan is hoping for European support after Azerbaijan took control of Nagorno-Karabakh following a rapid offensive there last month. Now, that's led to the exodus of more than 100,000 ethnic Armenians from the enclave.
Now, for more on the meeting in Granada, let's bring in Arise chief correspondent John Cookson, who's monitoring developments from London. John, great to have you on Newsday. Thank you for being here. Now, there are 2 days of talks in Granada. What's the main agenda item for today?
Hi there, ladies. Well, Zelensky's in town, so Ukrainian, of course, figures big in discussions today. That's not the only reason, though. This particular group, called the European Political Community, was founded after the invasion of Ukraine by Russia back in February 22 by President Macron. Its 27 EU members and some 22 other countries have joined into this coalition, as I say, which is basically anti-Moscow. So there have been a number of issues on the table today, but Ukraine is going to be figuring pretty large. Also up for discussion was, as you said in the intro, Nagorno-Karabakh, which was seized by Azerbaijan last month. Nagorno-Karabakh, a mainly Armenian enclave. Some 100,000, 120,000 Armenians live there. They've now are refugees, and most of them have now gone into Armenia, and this was up for discussion. But even though the Armenian Prime Minister, Mr. Pashinyan, is there, the Azeri President, Mr. Aliyev, has decided to stay away. One of two notable absentees, the other being President Erdogan of Turkey. It would have been a great help, because Turkey supports Azerbaijan generally, for them to be there, because there are still big tensions over what happened in Nagorno-Karabakh. It's a conflict which is far from over. There are other issues on the table. For example, that certain countries are still worried about Sweden's accession to NATO, those countries being Hungary and Turkey. There'll also be some discussion today at some point about artificial intelligence and the need for regulation as AI becomes prevalent across the world. So a full day of debate, but Ukraine very much at the top of the agenda.
Absolutely. And of course, we've already seen the arrival of Ukraine's President Zelensky. And you've alluded a little bit to what's on the agenda with regards to, of course, he continues to garner up support. But do we have any specifics as to what exactly President Zelensky is looking to achieve from this particular meeting?
He's looking for a lot. He's looking for political support, moral support, and, of course, more weapons from Europe. Just as cracks begin to show, Poland, Hungary, Slovakia seen as a little bit wobbly now in their support for Ukraine. And of course, also in the background is whether the US support will be sustainable in the present climate, political climate in America. So he's looking for all of that from Europe. And as the winter months approach in Ukraine, when it's very soon, in a month or so, it'll be too wet and too cold to fight, the Ukrainians are expecting more air attacks from Russian firepower, from drones or from cruise missiles. And what Zelensky wants is more support, more effort from the Europeans to give him air defenses so his forces can stave off these attacks. The other issue that Zelensky will be looking at to the Europeans is that Ukraine would like very much to become a member of the European Union. Now, that's probably many years away from now, mainly because of the conditions that are needed to join the EU. Ukraine will never join whilst it's at war, and there are other issues also that the Ukrainians have to sort out, human rights, corruption, and that sort of thing. So a lot for Zelensky to get his teeth into with the Europeans, but most of all, most of all, he needs more weaponry from the Europeans.
And John, immigration is also the main agenda item for tomorrow. Are EU leaders likely to agree on a policy?
That's a good question. And in fact, the Spaniards refused to put immigration actually on the main agenda for tomorrow's meeting of EU leaders, and it will be at a sidebar meeting hosted by Rishi Sunak and the Italian Prime Minister Giorgia Meloni. That's where a lot of the talking will take place. It is a massive crisis for Europe at the moment. 190,000 migrants have already arrived in southern Europe this year, 133,000 into Italy alone, and many of those heading north to countries like Germany and, of course, the UK. So I think there's a sense in Granada today that the Europeans have to do something. The EU has already pledged $1.2 billion to Tunisia to help that country prevent so many migrants leaving Tunisia. But as I found when I reported for a rise from Tunisia earlier this year, I mean, there's an absolute tidal wave of migrants waiting to cross the Mediterranean from countries like Tunisia, and it's difficult to know how that tide could be stemmed. So that's on the agenda tomorrow. Will they get some kind of a consensus? I've covered many European Union meetings before in the past, and I have to say that it always goes down to the wire and they fudge it in the end. But I think there's a good sense this time that because there is such a crisis in Europe at the moment, that they will make every effort to try to come to some sort of agreement.
And that's exactly where I was going to next, John, is that apart from this gathering of 50 European nations being unified by their anti-sentiment towards Russia, what are some of the key things we actually think they're going to agree on? Because there is, of course, a concern that this will end up just being a talk shop.
There's a press conference later this afternoon, so we'll find out what the position is on Ukraine. And I think there'll be a lot of promises made by this particular group, and Zelensky will know, he knows best of all, that some of these promises are not always followed up, but the intentions will be made known at some point this afternoon. On immigration, as I say, it is such an issue now in Europe, especially in countries like Italy and Germany, which is economically is suffering at the moment, and of course the UK, that there is so much pressure that although it will be difficult to get some kind of consensus, if the UK, Germany and France can stay strong on that, then there's a good chance that something concrete can come out of this meeting tomorrow.
Hopefully that will be the case. But for now, we'd like to thank you for your time and insight here on Newsday. Arise Chief Correspondent John Cookson. Thank you.